Hello, Combined Arms. I'm that Wimmer Kid, and this is a very simple mission that I've thrown together to show how to properly employ the Mark 6 mortar or any other short-range indirect fire weapons when there are no map markers, or at least omnipresent map markers present in the game. This will assume that people can at least make local marks in their map and can then figure out the grid location of those marks and relay them to people who will also be able to interpret the grid coordinates of those marks correctly. So all I have here is just a basic old vanilla Mark 6 mortar and some targets out there that I know roughly where they are. The only other additional piece of gear I have that's crucial for this is the 82mm range table. Without this thing, you're going to have a rough time trying to figure out what elevation to set your mortar tube at. But before we can begin doing any of the really fancy stuff, as you can see, I have no map markers anywhere, aside from the radio channels that don't really matter because I'm just playing a single player mission by myself in the editor. But we need to know where our mortar is in the world before we can start doing the math needed to put 82mm rounds of HE on something that needs to be exploded. So we are at the dam. That much I know. I mean, I've literally put this mission together, but when you set your mortar up in a mission, you know, you can move it around if you need to drag it or whatever, but you need to know where it is in the world, ideally within a few meters, so that you can make roughly accurate adjustments to fire. So, like I said, we are at the dam between these two buildings. Let's say that I look at this. Roughly here-ish is where I'm going to say that my mortar is. The tube exactly. That's the important part. So once mortar has that figured out, a forward observer or someone will be out in the mission doing their thing, and oh no, I see a target. I want it exploded with HE, with extreme prejudice. So they're going to open their map, and hopefully they will be able to figure out roughly where it is. So they can mark this down with what they believe the location of the thing to be destroyed is. And then what they'll do is they can take their map tools, if there's no other means of determining where you are. You can use this to give out a rough grid. If we line this up on top of where we think our object is, and then we zoom out so that we're looking at the nearest kilometer grid square. If you zoom in, it can get a little confusing because it will auto-populate these next hundredth of a grid square. But if we zoom out, you read a grid square from left to right, bottom to top, because they increase in an easterly fashion and then increase in a northerly fashion. That's where you get the name easting and northing from. That's what these are actually called. Just a little bit of trivia for you there. But we can see that that is roughly at grid 0, 9, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll call that 0927, and then when we come up, that'll be grid 133, 1, 2, call it 3. So we get approximately 0927, 1333. So whoever that is would call it out onto the radio so that whoever is directing this mortar fire, assuming there's no omniscient map markers, can then make their own mark at that grid coordinate. They'll pull out their map tools, they'll pull this up and be like, okay, so we have a fire mission for there. This is assuming that, again, the FO and the mortar person cannot see the same map markers because they are so far away. But at that point, we have more or less what we need to send a fire mission. So a mortar gunner on this would get on the mortar, pull out their compass, can figure out where that grid is. We'll assume that they've shared this location accurately with whoever the mortar gunner is. And then this works better with this actual compass on the map because it will update in real time compared to this, the map tools, which you have to manually refresh every time you want to change their orientation. So we can see that when we're facing too much southwest, we need to come more straight south. So pull out our compass and swing the tube over to the left. Back to the map. Okay, that's getting a little better. In fact, that might, dare I say, be on the money. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this black map marker because I don't think we'll really need it. So that's roughly where we think the forward observer has identified their target to be destroyed at. So now what we can do is we can align our map tools to our compass, and then zooming all the way in on these map tools, you'll notice a little pixel down here. This is roughly where I'm pretty sure you're supposed to start measuring the distance from, since it's a pretty thick line here. So we'll pull that down. That's roughly where we want it to be. It's giving us an accurate-ish range for where we are expecting our target to be at. On the small map tools, this big one is 1,000 meters, so each one of these slightly smaller ticks is 100 meters, so 100, 200, 300, 110, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 360-ish meters away. That's where our target is, but what matters to us as a mortar crew is more the direction we need to aim the mortar at, because if you look closely, where I'm looking at with my compass and the angle that this mortar tube is angled at is not the same, which is pretty annoying. And in fact, if I jump into the mortar computer right now and look at the azimuth there at the top in red, I have an azimuth of 2799, which does not align with what we have on our map tool here. The mils that we use to more accurately direct our mortars than these simple degrees that infantry and armored vehicles use for their other purposes. We need these milliradians here for artillery and indirect fire purposes so that we don't, miss. So when we come all the way around, we can see that we have a milliradian of about 3,300 and we'll call that 10. Each one of these larger ticks is another 100 in the milliradians, so 3,000, 3,100, 3,200, 3,300, with these shorter ones being in 20 increments. So since it hasn't gotten to that first 20 increment one, we'll say it's 3,300 and less than 10, so 3,300 and we'll go, I don't know, 8. Again, it's an indirect fire weapon. The forward observer should be giving you corrections, but, you don't need to directly land an 82mm mortar on someone's head in order to kill them with it, or at least even suppress them, which is what you're really trying to do with one of these things. So we said that the range to that was about 360 meters, so we're going to open our range table, and at a charge of 0, these only increment in 50-meter increments, but we can see that the closest one, 350, is an elevation of 1,205 mils. It'll probably be a little less than that, since the further out you want to shoot, the more you decrease the elevation to get more range out of the charge. But we'll shoot for 1,205, and we will adjust fire from there. So we will use our elevation adjust. This is the same thing you would use to adjust your 0 on your rifle, so I hope you have that bound. If not, I don't know how you've been playing Arma for this long, but 1,205. We have the correct azimuth of roughly 3,300 and some change. We have our range, at least partially bracketed, so we're going to shoot a ranging round, essentially. So we're going to call one away. Boom. I'm going to jump into the camera because I have that benefit here being in the single player. This truck is our target, so we're going to see where our round impacts. And if we've done our job well enough, it should be pretty close. For a light vehicle, that would probably be enough to scare some people, but we can do a little better. So, we were short, and we were left. So, this means is that we need to decrease the elevation a little bit like we expected. So, the next 50-meter increment on this would be 1,127. We don't need to drop it by that much. We only need to get the range out by maybe 10 more meters. You can do the math on this if you really feel the need to, but I'm just going to decrease this by about, I don't know, 1,179. Let me check that. 1,000. Yeah, that should be fine. And we'll come a little right to 3,315, and we'll shoot again. And we will see where that impacts. And that's right on the money, essentially. If you were the forward observer in this situation, you could basically call for your complete fire mission at this point by, in the real world, you would use fire for effect, and then whatever fire mission you gave the mortar crew, like 3 rounds high explosive, then they would fire those 3 rounds high explosive. These initial ranging shots are important so that they can dial it in and that the forward observer can make any corrections that are necessary. That, you know, if you're dealing with severe elevation changes, that'll throw the math off, but that's beyond the scope of what I'm doing for just this super quick pointer. We'll get a little bit into shooting for further ranges with this next target out here, which is just this BMP in the trees. So, okay, we've destroyed that first target. Now, forward observers telling us, oh, they've got a new target, and they think it's somewhere around here, which is absolutely not where it is, but we'll go with that just to see how adjustments can be made. So we'll get rid of that first fire mission marker. We'll keep our base of fire marker where we know our mortar is, and we will bring our compass out and see how we are aligned to that. Well, they've already put in the grid coordinates and all of that and called it up. We're not going to repeat that again. So we need to come more to the left from this. Yeah, we need to come way left. The compass is unfortunately not going to line up with where the mortar tube is on this model, and I think that's an asset-specific thing, so it will depend. Check it as a mission maker if you are planning on doing something that involves this, just so that we can avoid shenanigans as much as possible. Alright, we'll say that's good enough. And align the compass to the map tool to the compass, that's what I mean. Get this on there, and we'll get our milliradians of basically straight south. So let's aim straight south at 3200, and let's check that range. Range is about 700, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 750 meters. Okay, so we'll jump into our artillery computer, open our range table. We have to go into the second charge of this. 750, it's about 1404. So we will change our fire mode in the mortar to use medium. That'll give us further elevation ways, so we can aim our mortar a little higher. 1404. Close enough. And fire for effect. Well, not fire for effect. One away. So, ideally, we'll see where that lands in relation to that BMP in those trees. A lot of anxious waiting as artillery. And as you can see, that was way off. So I'd probably call drop 50, come right. So what do I mean by drop 50? Well, literally what I mean is go into the range table. We shot at 750. That was too far. So we'll bring it in closer. 1418. You can see that now, as we're shooting further away, well, actually, as we're shooting closer with a charge, these adjustments get a little more finite. We don't have that much room to play with. So, drop it up to 1418, and you'll notice the time of flight over here, so that we can accurately tell the forward observer when to really be paying attention to adjust the fire, so that they're not just constantly staring down their binoculars waiting for the round to impact. So we're gonna come that up to 1418, and we'll come right, maybe a full 20, and we'll shoot again. There's a lot of talk between whoever is observing these rounds fall and impact, and either who is shooting the mortar or who is giving instructions to the gunner on the tube. It's a very technical process that needs a framework that everyone that's participating in it correctly understands in order to do their job correctly. Okay, so that improved a little bit. We'll come right another 20. And we'll even bring the elevation up just a little bit further, and we'll fire again. If you wanted to be super serious about this, or to just conserve your ammunition, you could even be writing down what elevation and azimuths you're using as you fire it, so that you can have hard numbers back to reference to either bracket your target so you can more quickly get rounds to where you want to go, or make better adjustments. As you can see, that was basically on the money direction-wise, but I think we came up a little too much. So we were at... yeah, we'll shoot that, and we'll see how that goes. So you can see how mortar ammunition expenditure adds up quickly when you literally need to fire a round, wait for it to impact, and have that relayed back to you before you can even begin to make adjustments. It's a force multiplier, but it's definitely balanced out by that cooperative aspect of needing people who know their shit. And curiously enough, that impacted in basically the same place, even though we made an adjustment. But that's kind of how indirect fire weapons can go. The fact that they're in the air for so long being acted on, it you know, it it can really change up, just minor things. They don't fly the perfect same way every single time. You have to deal with, there's wind resistance, at least potentially an ace, and I'm sure there's some small standard amount of variation just coded into it so that they're not perfectly laser accurate Deathbringers all the time, because they are, again, indirect fire weapons. So we'll see how this changes up. And for infantry purposes, if there was a crew dismounted, that would be more than good enough, and you could fire for effect at this point. But, of course, we only have the one round left in our imaginary magazine, so we'll fire that one, and then we'll fire off a few more. And without changing anything, we'll see what kind of dispersion we can get with that. Alright. For not having any magic map markers, assuming that all we did was, again, this method of figure out where, what grid coordinate they're referring to the old-fashioned way, and just roughly using straight lines and a range table, we were able to get rounds on target decently well enough to provide effective fire support, I would say. Again, it'll change if you're shooting from a significant elevation difference, but, in my time of playing with CA, I can't say that I've had to deal with, a mortar asset being on a hugely different elevation from where the forward observer, if there was one, calling in targets was compared to where the target actually was. If you're in a valley and you're trying to call artillery up onto a hill, that's a danger you are assuming on your own, because trying to walk a mortar down a hill can turn bad very quickly. So just keep that kind of thing in mind. That's basically it. If there's anything you would like me to discuss further, feel free to let me know. I can make this into a multiplayer training session very quickly and can try to get people better feedback on what they may or may not need more practice on. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.